Well, welcome to our conference, our D22 Emergence conference here at Dwight School, Seoul. Thank you very much. This is an event powered by EduSpark. Now, today is a day of professional learning for the teachers here at Dwight, but it's also an opportunity to connect beyond our school with educators from across the region. We have over 350 registered attendees on EduSpark, and as well as a large number of people who've expressed interest on LinkedIn. On stage today and interacting with our speakers is Michelle Newman, the Dean of Teaching and Learning. Please give her a warm welcome. And Richard Todd, Dean of Student Life. Looking forward to some great speakers today. Fantastic. So I'm David Burke, the Dean of Technology and Innovation, and I'll be keeping a watch on time and moving us along as we progress through these two fast-paced keynote sessions with various presenters joining us from right around the world. Here in our auditorium and following along online are staff from Dwight School Seoul. Give yourselves a big round of applause, and wonderful to see. And let's look forward to the afternoon ahead. So let's have a quick look at the agenda of what's coming up. So throughout this first session, we have a host of various speakers. This will finish at around about 1:15 Korea time. The second session will be after our lunch break, with some more presenters joining us both on stage and around the world. Then at 4 p.m, our faculty will be headed off to different parts of the school to join in with the Zoom job-alikes, as well as joining and connecting with educators from across the region, across Asia Pacific. At 4:30 as well, there's another open Zoom session called Reflections, where you can share some of the big takeaways from today's showcase sessions. Now, social media, we've got the socials. You can use the hashtag D22 to share your thoughts with others, and we'll be looking to LinkedIn and Twitter throughout the afternoon. Of course, EduSpark is where you can comment directly on each module as we progress through the day. When you're inside the D22 course on EduSpark, select the module and then click on the lesson, then click on Discuss to post a comment on that item. This is, of course, the first time that EduSpark has been used for a live event, so fantastic stuff for us here at Dwight. Happy to make the most of this. As the event will remain online, along with the recording from today, people will be able to see your comments and interact later on as well. Now, there's the YouTube feed, which is where people will be watching us. If we can have next slide. Additionally, if you're watching this natively on YouTube, you can use the live chat next to the video, and we'll try to watch out for questions there as well, time permitting. The job-alikes. So following these showcase sessions, there are various job-alikes starting from 4 p.m. or a bit later. You can find those on EduSpark with links to the agendas, and the Zoom links are now open. It's a chance to connect with fellow educators who work in the same subject area as you. Also this afternoon from 4:30 p.m. Korea time, there's an open Zoom session called Reflections. Michelle will be leading that session, and it's a chance to reflect on the big ideas from our keynote sessions today. What are your big takeaways going to be? Find the Zoom link on EduSpark. In the reflection session, we also have a special guest joining us. Last year's D21 opening keynote presenter, Dan Hasler, will be dropping in for a chat, and he'll be talking about his new book, The Act of Leadership. So there's a lot to look forward to today. Now, our first speaker is a digital pioneer, an author, a thought leader, innovator, educator, and speaker. He's joining us live from the US. Please welcome to D22, Ericscheninger.
All right, thank you, everyone. Good afternoon. Although right now where I'm at, it is 8:07 p.m., but I'm going to switch to my slides, but at least you get to look at me. I can't see all of you. All right, let's get ready for a fast 20 minutes. So my name is Ericscheninger, and I'm excited to be coming to you tonight from Salt Lake City, Utah. But I am not good at time, so I got to breeze through my opening slides. All right, I was happy to see your hashtag, so I just inserted that. If you want to connect with me on social media, there's my Twitter handle. But if you got any questions, comments, use your hashtag, and I will look at it maybe tonight or at least tomorrow morning. So as we think about, where we are right now, we are in the midst of coming out of one of the most disruptive events to ever impact education. But prior to the COVID pandemic, we've already been in the midst of disruptive change for years because of the fourth industrial revolution. We've seen technology evolve at such a fast pace. You combine that with the pandemic, which, by the way, no one was prepared for. The whole idea is, how do we learn pivotal lessons to future-proof learning for our students right now? And when we think about what our learners need to not survive, but thrive in a world that is impossible to predict, we can look at these 6 dimensions of disruptive thinkers. When we think about teaching, learning, our culture, we want to empower our learners to be creative scholars, reflective learners, collaborative workers, active engagers, self-directed managers, autonomous inquirers. And as I mentioned before, it's hard to predict, with all this change, even what tomorrow will look like. But the idea is simple. When we think about disruption, we think about all this change, we want to prepare our kids to think and get them to apply their thinking in relevant and meaningful ways. But we have to heed the wise words of Albert Einstein. We know that change is now a constant, but insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. The most dangerous phrase in education, that's the way we've always done it. So the idea here is, as we think about where we are, it is okay not to have all the answers. No one does. It doesn't matter how many books someone's written, how many views they have on a TED Talk. If you're still trying to figure things out, don't worry, because we all are in every single profession, just like this guy.
Mr. Ponton, I believe you have a filter turned on in the video settings. You might want to take
we're trying to. Can you hear me, Judge?
I can hear you. I think it's a filter.
It is, and I don't know how to remove it. I've got my assistant here. She's trying to, but I'm prepared to go forward with it. I'm here live. I'm not a cat.
And that was an actual deposition in my home state of Texas. Everyone, the key is questions are more important than answers. We need to be comfortable with becoming uncomfortable. So how do we really create a culture of disruptive thinking? Number one, we got to begin to lean into learning. And as we think about where we want to go, we have to remember why. Why do we become educators? Why do we do what we do? It's because an educator impacted us. All kids have greatness hidden inside of them. It's the job of an educator to help them find and unleash that greatness. Some days, as we know, it is not that easy. But how do we begin to unleash that greatness? We build that foundation rooted in relationships. And then we focus on 2 other R's. How do we challenge our kids to think? Whether you call it rigor, thinking, doesn't matter to me. When we look at that vertical axis, how do we begin to bump up the level of thinking? Number 2, how do we make sure kids are applying their thinking in relevant and meaningful ways? If learning is relevant, kids won't be able to tell you just what they learned. They'll be able to tell you why they're learning it and how they will use what they're learning outside of school. The key to empowering our kids to be disruptive thinkers is to move around these 4 different quads. But when we think about now throwing technology in the mix, listen, I was a huge embracer of technology as a teacher and as a principal. But I want to make one thing clear. Technology is not a silver bullet. It will not improve every outcome. Here's what I mean by that.
Emma. 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 Emma.
here's the thing with technology, everybody. How are our learners using technology to learn in ways they couldn't without it? How does your use of technology represent a fundamental improvement over what you did without it? The key to helping cultivate a culture of disruptive thinking is to really focus on the competencies that we can develop that technology allows. And I love this image created by a grade 6 teacher here in the United States. Bill Ferreter reminds us technology is a tool. It's not a learning outcome. We want, again, our kids to be able to use it in ways to learn they couldn't without it. And that's why when I was a principal and we transformed teaching and learning, we became one of America's top achieving schools based on standardized test scores. We did a lot of things with tech, but we made sure that it was used in a purposeful way. And in the course with EduSpark, I dive into how this framework can be sort of a litmus test. It's either validation or it presents an opportunity for you to look at your tasks, your assessments, your questions, how technology is being integrated that really represents a fundamental improvement. And when we think about this world that we're living in, yes, we want to challenge our kids to think. We want to make sure learning is rigorous. We want to make sure it's relevant. But we got to go beyond engagement. We want to empower our kids where they see the value in their learning. And when we think about what our kids need now and well into the future, problem solving, collaboration, open-mindedness, analysis, reason, evaluation, thinking critically, creatively, real-world applications, reflection on learning, communication. All right. Then we got to focus on number 2, how do we meet the needs of all kids? We got to focus on how we ensure equity in our classroom and in our schools. What's equality? Giving every kid a device. What's equality? Every kid getting whole group instruction, lecture, direct instruction, which has its purpose. But that's not equity. Equity is all kids getting what they need when and where they need it. And one of the best ways to ensure equity in our classroom, in our schools, is through personalized learning. Personalization is a move from the what we teach, what's in the curriculum, what's on the test, to who, to emphasize ownership of learning. It's about all kids getting what they need, when and where they need it, through high agency strategies, voice, choice, path, pace, place, strategies such as station rotation, choice activities, which could include choice boards, playlists, the flipped classroom, asynchronous virtual learning, which is what EduSpark is all founded on. So as we think about personalization and we think about how we move to a culture of disruptive thinking, it's not about preparing kids for something. We don't know what that something is. We want to prepare our kids for anything. And to future-proof learning, 2 things, as I mentioned before: empower our kids to think and get them to apply their thinking in relevant, meaningful ways. Number 3, we got to be better than we are before. And just think about this. You all are on the other side of the world. I'm here. We can use technology to learn anytime, anywhere, with anyone we want. You're learning today on a Monday. And when we think about effective professional learning, it's a balancing act. Yes, it's what your school, what your system needs, but it's also, what do you need? And we want to personalize professional learning as well. And we want to find that sweet spot, everybody, where we're getting our needs as well as what the school needs. But let me be very clear on one thing. Professional learning that gets results based on the research from Linda Darling-Hammond out of Stanford University, from the Wallace Foundation, professional learning that gets results is job embedded and ongoing. And that's why I'm just got off a plane 45 minutes ago, as I'll be actually working with a virtual school out here in America, and then face-to-face schools the rest of the week. Ongoing, job embedded. But you could also look to work smarter, not harder, and get better results. Face-to-face, job embedded, ongoing, gets the best results. But you know what else you can do? You can learn anytime, anywhere, with anyone you want by creating your own personal learning network using social media tools, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. But if you're a disconnected nomad, now I grew up in a world where there was no internet. That's what it's like to be a disconnected nomad right now. I don't do that social media thing. The reason that I was in a better position to help my teachers grow and our school eventually achieve is when I got on Twitter in 2009 and I learned how much I did not know. Now, you could be a lurker, collaborative learner, willing participant. Here's the point, everybody. You can't take advantage of the space if you're not in the space. And if you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room. We can learn together no matter where we are. And the key is not just resources, but how we ask the right questions and get the answers from the true experts, which are you and your colleagues who are actually doing the work in classrooms and schools. And number 4, to really set the foundation, to empower our kids to be disruptive thinkers and move that culture forward, we need to share the stories. And as we think about sharing stories, it begins and ends with a communication. Effective communication helps to achieve goals, engage families, and get important messages across. Now let's dive into a masterclass in effective communication in less than 45 seconds.
I'm gonna tell you.
What?
I'm pregnant.
What were you thinking? Why you have to just get another baby? You just have 2. So why do you? This is exasperating.
Exasperated. Amaya.
Because you just got 2. So
You don't-
why do you want to place? Why you want to get another baby and just replace one of your babies? That's too much.
Oh, baby, we would never replace you and Amaya. You're just gonna have another brother or sister that you have to take care of. Well, help take care of.
That doesn't make no sense.
Oh my goodness, the body language, the facial expressions, and the pretty important points. Communication helps us scale all the great things that happen in our classrooms, in our schools. In the animal kingdom, it's eat or be eaten. In the human kingdom, it's define or be defined. Use effective communication stories to share, to celebrate. Well, actually, you've earned the right to brag about the work that you do with students. I hope you will consider becoming the storyteller in chief. And that's one thing that we did well. We weren't the most innovative school. We weren't the highest achieving in my area of the northeastern part of the United States, but we were better than everyone else at not just telling people why we were doing what we're doing, but showing how and what it looked like. In my school system, we actually had the New York City media, the largest media market in the world, coming to our school all the time to cover positive stories about what our teachers were doing. And it's all because we embraced the storyteller-in-chief mindset. Everybody, this world is changing. We don't want to wait because change is a constant and it's happening fast. Don't wait for the right opportunity. Create it. And how do you do that? Improve the work, share the work, celebrate the work. Ask the right questions. But when you think about change, it requires 2 things. Number 1, honesty. And number 2, vulnerability. It is near impossible to change our practice if we are not honest and we are not vulnerable. In a disruptive world, we need to be both of those things. And everything that we do, that you do, comes down to relationships. Without trust, there's no relationship. Without relationships, no real learning occurs. And I think that is probably the most important element that you do regardless of your role every day to make a difference in the lives of kids. It's those relationships, because that is what they will remember long after they have passed through your classrooms and your school. And remember this, everybody. You can do anything, but you can't do everything. I need help. I don't know. Admitting that is not a weakness. It is a strength. And I thrive because I constantly admit that I don't know and I need help. And thankfully, I'm connected to people all over the world thanks to social media. So, as I depart, and I'm very proud of myself because I'm actually going to get done a little sooner, which never ever happens. As we look at, I visit thousands of classrooms a year, helping teachers and administrators transform practice. And things that we continue to see that we try to impart, don't think you need to do it all yourself. Prioritize time, the standards you're focusing on, and the social emotional needs of your kids. Continue to advance growth and equity in your schools with professional learning. And know and appreciate the impact you have. Hope you will check my course out on EduSpark. If you're interested in my pandemic project, which was this new book, you can scan the code or you can write down that case-sensitive link. You can also see all my contact information is there, everybody. My DMs on Twitter are completely open. If you ever have any questions or you want me to give you feedback on something, please, please, please do not hesitate to reach out. Thank you for all that you do for kids, for being there for one another, for your students, for your community. It's been my honor to speak with you today. Enjoy the rest of the conference, everybody.
Well, thank you very much. Thanks, Eric. That was fantastic. Any comments, Deans, fellow Deans?
Well, I don't think we have a lot of time for any comments beyond saying, Eric, if people have been wondering about whether to stay in education or not because of the disruption that we've all experienced, I think after listening to you, it does re-energise us and think, we've got to stick to this business that we love and that we care about and we want to do well.
Yeah, we need you all so much as a parent and as someone that works side by side with teachers and administrators. Never doubt the impact you're having, everybody. You are doing amazing work, even when it's tough and you question, well, why am I doing this? I'm telling you right now, your work matters more than ever, and we are all in your debt.
Eric, thanks. We look forward to doing your course.
Ladies and gentlemen, please thank Ericscheninger. Now, this next presentation is from a group of educators here at Dwight School, Seoul. The Pineapple Project is an initiative from a group of staff who proposed a way to better build collaboration and feedback across the school. Please welcome to the stage here at D22 David Gagnier and Lucy Lee.
Hello, everyone. We are here. My name is Dave Gagnier. I'm an upper school teacher here at Dwight School, Seoul.
And I'm Lucy Lee from Early Child Division from Dwight.
And we're here representing a larger group, which was a part of a whole school initiative to look at approaches to teaching. And we were looking primarily to address two key needs at our school. One being there is a great deal of anxiety that goes along with the job of teaching, especially if you're at a school that's very busy and it feels like there's no gaps in your schedule to learn collaboratively from each other. But that's why most of us are teachers in the first place, is we are natural collaborators. And the idea of opening up your classroom to appraisal or for official observation brings about some understandable anxiety. But we also know that some of the best things that happen at our school happen behind closed doors. We never get a chance to see it. So we wanted an opportunity to open those doors, and hence the Pineapple Project. So you may have heard of the Pineapple Project before. There are other names, Pineapple Charts, etc. We are far from the first school to try this, but we're excited to do so this year. So why pineapples? As everyone knows, the pineapple is a universal symbol for hospitality and welcoming. So we wanted to embrace that, and it's very simple, actually. You simply hang a pineapple on your classroom door, which signals to the faculty that your classroom is open and you are willing to have guests come in and to just sit quietly in the back, do some work, and observe what you're doing in the classroom. It's the opposite of a high-stakes special presentation that you'd be giving for any other reason. We simply want to create a different culture here.
So for rationale for this initiative, as a teacher, we always try to find our way to provoke students' curiosity and encourage their collaboration. So in order to model natural curiosity and collaboration in our students, we believe that we need to provide and foster and further a dynamic learning community between and among teachers and students. So this initiative will encourage more open door policy to the school environment. And our group believes that it will provide more opportunities for teachers to get to know each other better and learn from each other by sharing our practices regardless of our teaching grade level or subject. So there are always things that you can learn from each other and then give different perspective to one another. So we think that it will be about our mindset. Since our group is for approaches to teaching, our group's conversation from the beginning was centered around how teacher can benefit from their teaching practice, which of course will lead to the benefits for the students. So our group thinks that in other words, it's not about something that you need to do on top of the work that you have already been doing. It is fully voluntary, and we want to highlight that it is within the supported environment. Our group tried to consider from the teacher's perspective, and we suggest this idea to be more open doors, minds, and school.
So as Lucy said, there's obvious benefits for students here in that if we are observing each other teaching regularly, we will develop a stronger understanding horizontally and vertically of what we're doing with curriculum. That will automatically help our students. We also get to see students in different contexts. Maybe there's a few quiet students in my English class, but when I see them in art, I see the teacher has a different approach that brings them out of their shell. Maybe that's something that I could be trying in my own classroom. It's also important for us to model collaboration. We're constantly asking our students to do that, and so we need to be doing that as well. And this does help us to facilitate a more authentic and organic learning environment across the school. So students see that we're benefiting from this too. Benefits for teachers are also clear. There's a lot that can be gained from sharing and observing each other's work in a low-stakes setting. We also become more aware of what our students are doing before they get to our classrooms, maybe in lower grades, and what they're doing beyond the time that they're with us. And we get to experience new techniques from our colleagues, which is something we always say we want and we somehow never seem to have time for. It also allows us to become more familiar with IB terminology without reading a 300-page guide. We're actually doing it by practically applying it in the classroom.
So now I'll briefly explain how you can actually use this exciting pineapple chart. So first, we have been trying to make this whole process very simple and clear, whether you're a host teacher or a guest teacher, so it's very self-explanatory. So first, if you want to be a host teacher, you can hang this pineapple sign on your classroom door so that you're saying everybody that your classroom is open to anyone, anytime. Or if you prefer your visitor to come at certain time for certain learning experiences to be seen, and we can always communicate through bulletin board by updating sharing what period our classroom is available for a visitor to come in or what cool activity you're planning on. So it's fully up to you. And it's not something that you need to perform well when someone comes in. It is completely for you to feeling good about yourself as a teacher. The reason why we are initiating this initiative is for us as a teacher feeling good about yourself. So that is completely voluntary, and then it's depending on your schedule, so whether you want. So we just want you to take the most out of it. So next one. And if you want to be a guest teacher, it's even simpler. So just take the most out of the classroom that you're visiting. And there might be a lot going on in the classroom, so you can actually participate as like taking an active role, or just simply pop in to see what's going on, or you can actually sit at the back of the classroom just to observe. So as an educator, we are the most valuable asset in our own school. So this initiative is for us being more exposed to one another by sharing our ideas and practices, especially voluntarily.
And as Lucy says, the research does support the idea that making this program a voluntary in terms of participation brings about the most success. So this is not anything that you need to be accountable for beyond your own professional development. It's a wonderful idea that we've all got lots of grading to do. We've got lesson planning. We have all these things boxes we need to check as teachers. And we do tend to do that in our own quiet spaces, which makes sense. But you could actually be exposing yourself to other really beneficial teaching techniques by bringing that marking into someone else's classroom, sitting quietly in the back, and as you're doing your grading, as you're checking your emails, etc., you're also watching someone else's approach to teaching and benefiting from that in practice. So schools could take this a little bit further if they wanted to in terms of actually logging professional development. But as we mentioned, having it start on a voluntary basis is for everyone's benefit. You could celebrate participation by having a delicious pineapple feast at the end of a semester. You could play pineapple bingo by showing that you're willing to visit classrooms either vertically, so going all the way down to ECD, and then up to our oldest students in grade 12, and beyond that into extracurricular programming or athletics. And you can also go horizontally across the curriculum to see what the students that you're teaching are doing in other subject areas. One thing that we have been doing so far to recognize people's efforts is kudos. So just a quick Google form is all it takes for you to observe someone else in the classroom, notice a specific approach to teaching that they're doing, and we can celebrate through weekly meetings when we gather as a faculty and recognize that there's actually a lot of great things happening in the classroom. So we're very thankful to the faculty here at Dwight School Seoul for embracing this, and we're looking forward to more participation throughout semester 2. And for anyone who's interested in hearing more about the Pineapple Project or needs some resources, feel free to email Lucy or myself. Our emails are on EduSpark. And thank you, my pineapple pal, for joining me today. Well done. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Our next speaker for this first session is Steve Sostak. After 15 years teaching elementary and middle school on 3 continents, Steve founded Inspire Citizens, an independent educational organisation working with diverse partners to reimagine schools as thriving community centres of transformative learning. Please make him welcome to D22, Steve Sostak.
Everybody, it's great to be here. Thank you so much for the invitation. I'm actually calling up from Western Academy of Beijing, where I do some partner work from Inspire Citizens, who I work for. And just to honor the 15 minutes that we are together, let's just kind of dive right into it. I'm going to share my screen here. So, guys, what I want to talk about today is really a chance for us to engage in some thinking that, not only us as teachers, but our learners are going through, our schools are going through as communities. And, the idea that our world is a volatile and complex place. And, when we think about this in the way that we approach teaching and learning and designing learning experiences for our kids, what I'm going to ask us today is to go through the lens of what we call futures thinking. It gives us a chance to, allow our students to shape the future they want. The ability for them to, for us to empower them with the dispositions and cognitive skills that are going to take them and us forward to make our world a healthier and a better place. So really briefly in this particular image, we have to start asking ourselves, things like climate change is here. What does that mean for us as teachers and learners? Social polarization is here. What does that mean in terms of how we design the future of our schools? Biodiversity loss, the future of AI and technology at work, inequalities and the mental health issues that not only us as teachers are going through during COVID, issues, even what's going on in the Ukraine right now, but imagine also what's going on with our students in their social emotional space. So that idea that we have to face the future to be better at what we do, and also to empower the kids to be able to feel, that they can actually change the world and make that difference. Somebody that I want to introduce you to, if you don't already know, this is James Baldwin. You probably have heard of James Baldwin, but this quote really, I think, sits well with Inspire Citizens and the work we do. And we would do when we work with teachers and students and administrators, we always ask ourselves to say, what is it that we need to face? We're not always going to be empowered or have the ability to change it, but we can't change it until we face it. So I highly recommend, if you haven't had a chance to look into the past of James Baldwin's work, please do. So a little bit about me. I was a teacher for 15 years, middle school, elementary school, I taught in Peru, Chicago, Malaysia, and most recently now in Beijing. And I'm going to be moving to The Hague in a couple months. And I just wanted to just remind you guys that going through this 15 minutes with me is that I'm always going to be coming from the teacher hat. Inspire Citizens and the work we do doesn't come to flip tables and change everything. You're already doing fantastic things. So what we're going to look at then today is how do we enhance purpose? How do we enhance action? How do we enhance research skills? How do we enhance interdisciplinary learning to then hit those transformative cognitive skills and dispositions while we actually make our planet and ourselves better people and a better place? So the way that I'm going to frame it today, empathy to impact actually is our framework. It's care, aware, able, and impact. But to keep things simple today, I want us to just sort of take a journey through the head, the heart, and the hands of education. And actually in this case, what I want to do is I want to start with the heart. Because when we talk about empathy to impact, everything that we're trying to do is geared off of building vocation and building a sense of purpose. So in this case, you're kind of asking yourself, well, what's your why? Right? Why are we here? Why are we teachers? Why do we teach? Why do we get in this in the first place? And as you know, when I reflect upon my life as a teacher, and also really in this case, this picture, my life as a father, these are my three girls. You know, Jessica on the left, she's actually still in Peru. We adopted both Jessica and Fatima while I was teaching in Lima. And imagining her future right now, still struggling with COVID, you know, looking for work. It's a tough go right now in Lima, Peru. Fatima on the right, she is actually 21 in Chicago, where I'm originally from, but struggling, you know, with the complexities of COVID in school right now, in university. She's working at Starbucks, just kind of making ends meet. And then my little one in the middle, she's my new high school student. She's going to high school, believe it or not, in a couple of months in The Hague. And what kind of a world is she going into? What is she dealing with when we look at the future of technology, with the future of work, with the future of sustainability, globalization, and mental health? And these are our kids. These are the kids of the future. We all are teaching them, right? Whether we're teaching them in classrooms, after-school programs, whether we're parents, you know, getting them and their understanding and our ability to engage with them to shape the future with them in this kind of complex, you know, landscape that we have is absolutely critical in the way that we teach and learn. So what I'm going to ask you to do in a second here is I'm going to play one video, actually two short videos for you. And I just want us to think, feel, and care, and look a little bit at what we see in what these students are trying to put forward for us. This first video is going to be a little bit more about mental health. Second video is going to be a little bit more related to climate change. And let's hear it straight from the students' voices. So I wanted to share that with you just again to get our heads around the idea that our students do have agency and voice. The video might be lagging a little bit, so I'm going to be careful. I'm going to not show this video, but the cool thing about this video, I'll put it in the liner notes and we'll send it out to all of you at the end. Those of you that have the actual PDF, it's hyperlinked here. But the beauty of this video is you have students that are really coming to the forefront and advocating and telling the story of the bushfires in Australia through the eyes and the lenses of using poetry to express what's going on with biodiversity loss in Australia. Both of these were done in partnership with SEMA Classroom and Videos for Change from High Resolves. So two other things I would highly recommend checking out. What I'm going to ask you now to do is we're going to move a little bit into the head. And when we get into the head, we have to start thinking again about what is it cognitively that we need our students to be able to do when we're designing our learning experiences. Many of us that work in IB schools, for example, we've got those ATLs, but are we centering our teaching and learning on those deeper learning skills, those cognitive skills or the learner profile type dispositions that really set our students forward, and how are we sharing the story of their growth in those areas? This also is a fantastic website from the American Library Association that looks at all of the future trends going on in the world right now and starts to ask us, again, what do these trends mean? What does it mean for education? What can we do in terms of making insights and then foresights? And what does that then mean for us in the classroom and in our school communities? So what I want us to say today then is we're at an inflection, right? I mean, we can look at the Ukraine. Let's be really right on with the time. What's going on, with the idea of global governance and democracy. We're living through COVID, right? Climate change, all those things we started with at the beginning are here. So we are at that inflection point. We have a lot of these diverse change drivers. The world is volatile. As international schools, we have to start to ask ourselves as well, where do we fit in our role in this landscape? Are we complicit? Are we being proactive instead of reactive to the way that we design teaching and learning? Climate change is a very good example. And this is a word that I always come back to when we work with schools, with Inspire Citizens, when we work with students. We don't want to just prepare them for the future. We want them to be the ones that are shaping the future. So what I'm going to ask us to do then for a minute, I'm going to put up a slide. And I want you just to read it and engage with it. And then take a minute to turn and talk. If you have a computer, you can add to the chat. Or if you're a Twitter person, you can tag me on Twitter. And I just want you to take one word, one phrase, one sentence, or one quote that most resonates with you from this next slide. And in essence, the work that Aaron and Scott and I do with Inspire Citizens, this kind of really summarizes, I think, where we sit in our philosophy of the future of teaching. So let's take about 90 seconds to read and engage. Talk with your neighbors when you're done. Send it in the chat also. So now let's take that minute, turn and talk to your neighbor. What word or phrase really jumps out at you? What might you be questioning? What do you agree with? Right? Not asking for you to follow 100% in the footsteps of what we're putting here, but do engage. Take a minute in either the chat, Twitter, or with your neighbor. Now, as you're finishing up, what I want to do is I want us to also take a breath, because there's things we can do. This is where the hands come in, right? And the kids can do it too, and that's who we want to give, really all of these tools and all the thinking and all the stuff that we're doing, we want to give these opportunities for the students. So if you look here, I want to talk briefly about hands. And you can see here, we work a lot with concepts of what we call enhanced action, similar to what you see in the PYP. You may see some words that are similar. And we look and we help our students and we help our teachers to design learning experiences that allow them then, whether it's regards to nature, whether it's regards to well-being, whether it's regards to social justice, whether it's in regards to humane technology, how then do we connect it to actual action steps? And allowing our students then to have the pathways to actually feel like they can be engaged global citizens working for sustainable development. Another thing that's really important is that idea of helping our community to get to that point where we can get into an empathic listening and generative space so that we can actually co-create solutions. The excitement of creativity in our community, that we can actually do something, can be really powerful. This image comes from Theory U. If you need to check that out, I highly recommend that work. And then what I wanted to do in closing is just share a gallery of images around what it is that we can see kids doing to make our world a better place, to build more compassion into their experiences in the way that they're compassionate with themselves, with others, with nature, with systems, and beyond. Using photography to engage with architecture and geometry and nature. Partnering with podcasts like Out of the Blocks to then work with them to interview people close to your school and in your community. In this case, empowering the stories of senior citizen women. Getting out and using opportunities to engage in dance and music in nature. Our littlest ones using simple machines to clean up the ocean and create a TV show, KG Engineers TV. Salva Duke from A Long Walk to Water and bringing in like-minded people into your community to spread joy and the power of clean water. Exposing students at an appropriate level to finding their passions and what they want to connect to in terms of making a difference. Connecting with the planet. How do we care for the planet if we don't love the planet? Podcasting, creating audiobooks, learning on a deep level about the target level of the Sustainable Development Goals, asking hundreds of questions that can guide your PYP exhibition, writing picture books, empathic listening across ages, connecting with nature in experiential learning, designing hydroponics models and gardens in your classrooms or outside your classrooms, of course. Art for change. Meeting your neighbors. Eco-photography, which is a course that we run with Inspire Citizens for both kids and teachers. And so on, so on. Look at the happiness. Taking recycled wood and cardboard, Kane's Arcade, building areas of play for younger kids on campus. Connecting to data. Pitching a future that is healthier for all. And then running it through with your parents. Look at the joy. That's empowerment. That's shaping a future that these kids want. So just remember that Inspire Citizens is here. We're here to help. We talked about heart, head, hands today. We do a lot of work using our empathy to impact model to help you take what you already do and lift it up. Here's that eco-photography course that we were just talking about. It's something we're running this summer in July with Chapters International and Digital Citizenship Institute as a way for both teachers and students to get to know nature better. And we also do run of full year and quarter-long master's courses. And of course, the big one, our partners at EduSpark, why we're here. We have a Futures Thinking for Education module that will actually get you into videos and insights and making foresights in a cohort to help you get through what it is that we need to be looking at and how we need to be thinking differently about what we're teaching and learning in our schools. So guys, thank you, Dwight, so much for having me. I hope that fit. I hope I didn't talk beyond 15 minutes, but it was just really a great opportunity to be here. And please, last thing, never hesitate to reach out. I'm very good. Inspire Citizens was great about getting back to you through email. And obviously, if you want to follow our story on Twitter, it's all there. So I'm going to stop sharing. And if you guys, I don't know how much time we have left, but don't hesitate to throw some questions this way.
Thank you very much, Steve. Any questions for Steve before he goes? Some very timely considerations there. We do have a microphone over in the centre of the room. If you want to be brave and step up and ask a question. We have a question floating without a microphone, Mr. Forbes. I'll relay the question.
Is there a project he's been involved in with his kids that he's most proud of?
Good question. Is there a project you've been involved with, Steve, that with your students that you're most proud of?
I think that opportunity when we had to work with Salva Dutes, I don't know how many of you have read A Long Walk to Water, but we were the first, when I was teaching at Mount Kiara International School in Kuala Lumpur, we had a chance we invited Salva to come to be his first international school that he was going to basically do project-based learning through the whole school as what we called an activist in residence. And the kids actually ran the entire conference. They did choreography around his book. Kindergartners were writing picture books around, clean water in South Sudan, for example, and looking at water issues in Kuala Lumpur. So that was something that's really stuck with me, and Salva and I have stayed close friends since. I also do a lot of work with media that makes me really proud. We had an idea years ago at ISB with Aaron, my co-founder of Inspire Citizens, of starting, ask the question, what would it look like if we took National Public Radio, you can kind of see back here what we're doing at WAB, and we turned it over to the kids. So looking at, mentor podcasts and mentor TV shows and allowing them to really try on creating media for good. So that's always another one that's been a real close to my heart.
Well, that's fantastic. Well, I'm mindful of time, but Steve, thank you so much for your presentation today. Ladies and gentlemen, please thank Steve Sostak. Thanks, Steve.
Hi, guys.
All right. Now, our last speaker for this first session is Dr. Gillian Judson. She's an assistant professor of the Faculty of Education at Simon Fraser University. Gillian teaches in educational leadership and curriculum and instruction programs. Her current research looks at imagination's role in leadership and learning. So for this last 20 minutes, please welcome to D22 Dr. Gillian Judson.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm joining you today from the unceded and ancestral territories of the Kwantlen, the Katzie, and the Semiahmoo First Nations people. I really want to acknowledge that I'm an uninvited guest on these lands. You may know them as Vancouver, BC, Canada. And I'm pleased to be able to share with you a couple of programs and a couple of opportunities for learning that I'm offering through EduSpark platform and that I'm working with educators on and leaders on around the world. So the first of these is something called a walking curriculum. My research has shown there tends to be a strong emotional disaffection. Students, in terms of their relationships with the natural world, very, very few have a strong sense of place, a strong emotional connection to place. And so my research on imaginative ecological education has been looking at how do we engage emotion, imagination, and the body in particular places. And so this program I have through EduSpark, and I'm hoping that many of you will join me and other educators around the world, is called a walking curriculum. So how do we take learning outside classroom walls with imagination and inquiry-focused walks? Not just using imagination, but growing tools of imagination. If any of you are familiar with the work of Dr. Kieran Egan, teaching as storytelling, the walking curriculum applies those very practical tools that we can engage in our teaching to support student engagement, to empower them to connect to the natural world. And very importantly, at a time when we face devastating ecological problems, how do we move them to behave differently? And so the walking curriculum is a set of activities that extends learning outside classroom walls and then supports you in bringing learning back inside the classroom in interdisciplinary ways. So I hope you'll check that out. This has been part of my research now for over a decade. And I'm very excited with the global impact I've had with the walking curriculum. It was recently, or maybe not so recently, last year identified by 100.org as one of the top 20 global innovations. And so it is perhaps something you'd like to check out. Certainly if you want to expand the way you engage students, support their creativity by cultivating their imaginations in learning. And so the second program or offering that I am happy to share through EduSpark is the second facet of my research. And the thing that connects both is imagination. I've been studying imagination for over 15 years, particularly how it develops in us, how it changes throughout our lives, and importantly, in terms of curriculum, how do we centrally engage it in learning? Now I'm, however, looking specifically at leadership, and I'm calling all leaders in the audience, all leaders that are part of the EduSpark world, to join me in looking at the role of imagination in leadership, and considering the ways in which imagination holds the roots of many facets of leadership, from engaging others, understanding the self, understanding others, empathizing, building inclusive communities. These are all rooted in imagination. One of the problems we face is that people misunderstand what imagination is. So what we'll do in this course is consider how we can reimagine imagination. Think of it as the soil out of which many of the capacities we need as strong leaders has and is developed, where we find the roots of those capacities. And I hope you'll join me, leaders. I hope two educators will join me in considering how they also use imagination in their instructional leadership, and how, in fact, imagination is very central to all of our lives, through the stories we tell, the stories we listen to, all these very practical ways in which we are imaginative beings are at the heart of both of the courses that I'm offering through EduSpark. And I hope very much that people would be interested to learn more about those. So I'd like to open it up to anybody who might have a question for me about imagination, about walking curriculum, about imagination in leadership, or I hope I've planted a seed and in fact you will be interested and join me online in either one of my courses.
Thanks, Gillian. It's Michelle here. Can you hear me?
I can. Hi, Michelle.
Hi. For us at Dwight, obviously the pandemic has made it really tricky for us to get out and about into the environment. And I think that's something that we value for our children, and we definitely believe in that experiential learning. Can you just perhaps, are there some schools that you think have been doing this particularly well that maybe you could talk to us about, or ways that we can modify what we do, even though if we can't take the full advantage of those big trips that we would normally have in our curriculum?
Absolutely. So the ideas that are part of the walking curriculum have been published in a couple of books called Imaginative Ecological Education. And they bring together three principles that are basically focused on how we cultivate an ecological understanding. One is feeling. We need to feel. We need to be emotionally engaged to be moved to action. The other is activeness. How do we engage the body? And the third is place. How do we connect to the natural and cultural context in which we live? And so after writing those two books, it's still the content still wasn't reaching teachers. So the walking curriculum began with a simple question: how do we move social studies or language arts or mathematics into the schoolyard? And that's what I'm talking about here. I'm not talking about big trips outside of the schoolyard. I'm not talking about big field trips. I'm talking about moving student learning outside school walls into the very immediate local community. And so in Canada anyways, the walking curriculum has been a huge interest because you don't need many field trip forms, you don't need funding, you don't need many permissions or extra supervision to move learning into the schoolyards in which students are already learning. And this is for rural, urban, suburban schoolyards. There's wildness everywhere if we're aware of it and if we're inclined to look for it. And so I just wanted to address that. I wasn't clear about what this is for. This isn't about planning a field trip once a year. This is how do we move learning out of our classroom each and every day for part of that day into the schoolyard in ways that grow, cultivate, and engage imagination. So for example, we have the resource itself has 60 different inquiry-focused walks. But what they aim to do is have students explore their schoolyards 60 different ways, becoming hoarders of detail, noticing the smallest changes, becoming more and more engaged and connected with the environment in which they're in. There's line walks and border walks and horizontal walks and insect walks and color walks and shadow walks. And each walk is paired with a tool that the educator can use to then connect the learning back into the classroom. So we're engaging emotion and imagination in the immediate environment.
I thank you for your answer to that. I love what you're helping us to consider here. I mean, often I feel like imagination and creativity is so present in our lower school classrooms, and then somewhere along that journey it gets a little bit disconnected into the upper school classrooms, even though we still value that creativity and imagination, but we're not pushing out as much as we could to connect and become more engaged and noticing our environment more authentically.
Absolutely. One of the things I deal with a lot is misconceptions about imagination. If you ask educators about imagination, they consider it important, but probably not applicable past primary school. We couldn't be more wrong about that. If I talk to leaders, we tend to think of imagination as, you know, butterflies and unicorns and all of these imaginary things. But we can, if you've read The Pragmatic Imagination or Imagination First or all of these books that aren't mainstream, we know that imagination is the soil out of which creativity and innovation grow. We talk about wanting to cultivate creativity in schools, but it's the ability to envision the possible that comes before that creation or that innovation. And so we can't jump past imagination. Imagination comes first. Sir Ken Robinson said the same thing, but we don't tend to think of it. There's a lot of misunderstanding. It also makes us vulnerable. We have to be vulnerable if imagination pushes us to move to the left when everybody's typically gone to the right in our practice. So there's lots of reasons why there's misconceptions about imagination, but all of my work looks at imagination in very tangible, in very practical ways. Like Pendleton and Brown, I suggest we need to put imagination to purpose. The pragmatic imagination is at the heart of our most senior history classes, our biology classes, whatever it might be. It's at the heart of my post-secondary teaching. Yes, graduate school teaching. We need to find the story in the topics we're teaching, even as the complex theories we're looking at. So if anybody's interested in imagination, interested in their own, interested in how imagination can be foundational, is and can be developed in their leadership, then I hope you'll join me in either one of the courses I'm involved in with EduSpark.
Fantastic. We have some comments floating in as well from online. So this is Nicole Nell here at Dwight. She says this is one of the most important aspects of how we can grow children, especially from our youngest learners in preschool. It's so vital, getting outside and learning beyond the four walls in the classroom. Also, another one of our teachers, Dinu, says, I'm going to try this, teaching art and music outdoors. Thank you very much for your time. Ladies and gentlemen, please thank Dr. Gillian Judson.
Thank you very much.
And ladies and gentlemen, it's now time for us here at Dwight to take a lunch break. We'll be back here for the second session at 2:15 p.m. So we look forward to seeing you all back here then. Thank you very much.